Hey, Shalom, family, Shalom. It's your brother with the servant. It's your brother Eli.
It's your boy, y'all.
Hey, coming back at y'all with another Tuesday, man. Truth revealing Tuesdays. Truth revealing Tuesdays. Through the spirit of the Most High, every Tuesday, if He bless us and gives us the permission, we coming out revealing the truth on a Tuesday. And we want to start out by giving all praises to the Most High Yahweh by Shema Mashiach Yahushai, and another shalom to the 12 tribes of Israel, to the mighty brothers who risk their life laboring in His truth, to the sisters who encouraging their husband. If they don't got a husband, they following Yahushai through the spirit, and amen, coming back together as Israelites. So shalom to you brothers and sisters, man. Shalom, shalom. Hey man, it's part 2, revealing the indigenous people of this land. And you can go ahead and tell them what the title is real quick, brother.
Kind of revealing the indigenous people of this land, right? So a lot of our people, they don't know, for instance, about the Cherokee, the Choctaw, right? And chiefly what we're going to tonight, right? The Black Indians, right? Or the Black Seminoles, right? Which actually are our people. And when you go into it, you find out that a lot of our people left the slavery from under the so-called white man and joined forces with the Seminoles down in Florida, right? So we're going to go into that, get a history. We got some books, we got a couple of videos, and we're going to dive into it through the
All
spirit
right.
of the Lord.
Praise. So before we do that, we always want to just bring up, you know what I'm saying, bring up a little history. We always want to bring up a little history. Or not history, but a little current events, I should say. A little current events. So through the spirit, we're gonna tap into a bill that got approved a little bit today. We're gonna tap into this bill that we saying got approved today. All right. So now, without further ado, let me pull this up. Let me pull this up. And when you see it, can you see that, brother?
Gotcha.
All right. Let's tap into this. Read this for me.
It says Israel passes first reading of bill proposing death penalty for people it deems terrorists.
Interesting. All right. Let's keep going. And we see this devil right here. Let's keep going.
It says Israel's parliament has passed the first reading of a bill proposing the death penalty for those it deems to be terrorists acting against the state, a requirement which means it is likely to be used only against Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks on Israelis.
Right. So now this is what they starting off saying, right? And this is how it go. They always start bills for one people, but in that same bill is going to end up being synonymous and spread throughout the whole world. This is what this is coming to. But let's keep going.
And it says the bill, which has been condemned by the Palestinian Authority and human rights groups, was backed in the 120 seat Knesset by 39 votes to 16.
Right.
Far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, whose Jewish Power Party brought the vote, celebrated late on Monday by handing out sweets.
He said they celebrated by passing out sweets. So now these Amalekites have got approved to do something who they get to pick and choose who is deemed terrorists. So now what does they do? They happy, they celebrate, and what are they doing? Handing out sweets. Now watch this. Come on. Watch what they say. This is how these devils think. Watch this.
After the law is finally passed, terrorists will only be released to hell.
He said that what?
Terrorists will only be released to hell.
Right.
He said the bill must pass 2 more readings before becoming law.
Right. So now it's 2 things that these devils is trying to do, man. They trying to pass a bill to where, if they deem you a terrorist or a threat to their society, they want a law passed that you can get put to death, right? And why is that so important for us to know? Because not only is that going to fit the Ishmaelites that they warring with at this time, but eventually they're going to bring to the front door of who? Babylon the Great. And who is that going to affect? It's going to affect the real Israelites, right? They're going to deem us as threats next, and now they're going to be seeing what he say. They're going to look at us, and we're going to be labeled as terrorists to be released to hell. And we're going to prove that with the Bible that this is the motive that these devils is trying to come with. But let's keep going. Let's read down. We're going to read this next topic right here. So this is another thing that this devil is trying to do. Come on.
The same session, the the Knesset also approved the first reading of another controversial bill allowing the Israeli government to close a foreign media outlet without court approval.
Now, this is another one, right? And this is one of the major media outlets in the so-called Middle East that exposes all the evil, the atrocities, and the G-sides that what I'm saying that are committed over there. So now let's read this. Keep going.
That vote was 50 in favor and 41 against. It says the legislation aims to turn a temporary order that allowed the closure of Qatari owned Al Jazeera in May 2024 into a permanent law. It has been opposed by the government's legal advisors.
Right.
While the death penalty does exist for a small number of crimes in Israel, it has only been used twice since 1948.
All right, so that's enough on that. So now, why are these things important? What are these people trying to do? Because they don't have to do that in Babylon the Great, because newsflash, they already control the media outlets here, right? So now they're trying to put two bills in motion. They want people who are considered to be terrorists to be put to death, who they deem fit. And now they're trying to wipe out Al Jazeera. And if you're a person who follows the last days, current events, the current wars in the world, Al Jazeera is a big platform that exposes a lot of the wars and a lot of the evils that Amalek commits in the world today. All right. So now let's get into the Bible and prove how this is prophecy and why is this so important for us to be hip to, right? This what came out today. So now let's pull this up. Let's start sharing the screen. Let's do window. All right, let's get in the Bible. Let's go in the Bible and let's deal with this. Let's go to the book of Revelations chapter 12. All right, let's go to Revelations chapter 12 first. And now let's jump to Revelations 12 and 12. And if you don't mind reading this for me, King Baba Kashab.
God, the book of Revelation chapter 12, verse 12.
Uh-huh.
Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time.
So this is why when you think about the whole race of Esau, when they move and how they articulate war, how they move on the earth, and how they come up with bills to fit their narrative. This is why they do this, right? Because they are in wrath and they have great fury because they know they have just but a short time, right? The doomsday clock is ticking, right? Come on.
And it says, and when the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man child.
Right. So now he's saying also that it's going to come a time when they have a short time on the earth that they're going to persecute the woman which brought forth the man child. Who is the woman that brought forth the man child? In the physical term, on one level, it would be Mary, but on another fold, it would be Israel. Israel, our mother, would be the woman who brought forth the man child because Yahushua is from Jerusalem. But keep going.
And to the woman were given two wings of a great eagle.
Right. So stop right there. So it says to the woman were given two wings of a great eagle. That sounds familiar. Come on, let's finish that verse off. No, it says, and to the woman were given two wings of a great eagle. Right. Let's just stop right there and let's deal with that real quick. Why is that familiar? Right. Where can we read about that at? Let's read about this in the book of Exodus. Right. So read the book of Exodus chapter 19 and verse number 3. So we dealing with the wings, right? These wings that the Most High is going to have the woman use to fly into the wilderness. Let's bring that out.
The book of Exodus chapter 19 verse 3. And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and
tell said to who?
Thus shalt thou say unto the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel,
right?
Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bear you on eagle's wings.
He said how he buried the Israelites on eagle's wings. So now when you jump over to Revelation, the nation of people that bear, the only people in the Bible to ever bear eagle wings from the Most High is the children of Jacob and the children of Israel, right? But let's read on.
And brought you unto myself.
Now,
Therefore,
that's it on that one. That's it on that. We're gonna get another account. Let's get another account. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32. Let's get the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, and start at verse number 9.
Khan,
What are we
do
showing here? What are we showing here? We are showing you that in the last days, the Most High is setting up the Israelites in the same fashion as he once did, right? This devil is in wrath because they have a short time of rulership. So now what is taking place? With the wrath that they have in the short time that they have, there's going to be a lot of bloodshed on the earth. There's going to be a lot of wicked revelings on the earth. There's going to be a lot of cultural vulturing being on the earth, right? There's going to be a lot of inheritance and anything you name that's worth value being taken from the original descendants and given to who? These devils who's mad because they only have a short time on the earth. But go ahead and read that, King.
Khan, Deuteronomy 32 and 9.
Uh-huh.
For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance.
All right, come on.
He found him in a desert land.
And he said he found him in a desert land. Come on.
And in the waste howling wilderness.
Right.
He led him about. He instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye.
So close, hold on, Salakia. Pay close attention to what he said. So now think about it. He said he found the Israelites in a desert land, right? And in the waste howling wilderness, right? So what wilderness and howling desert land is he talking about? A land void of the understanding of God, a land void of wisdom, right? Come on. And then he said in the wilderness, this will be a place where he will lead the Israelites and instruct the Israelites. Come on.
Khan, as an eagle stirred up her nest, fluttered over her young, spread abroad her wings.
Right.
Taketh them, bears them on her wings.
Come on.
So the Lord alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him.
Right. So now what is this saying? When the Lord pulls the Israelites under his wings, he pulls us under him to instruct us and guide us and keep us and protect us. And it also says that what? So Yahweh alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. So now when we go back, let me get a couple more precepts on it. But when we go back, we'll have another understanding of knowing when the Lord signifies that he guides the children of Israel under eagle's wings, it signifies that the Lord brings the children of Israel to himself, he instructs us and guides us to where the point where he puts the spirit on us that we don't what? Follow other gods, right? And these are the things that he does to us in the wilderness when he guides us there by his what? Eagle's wings. So now we're going to get another precept on these eagle's wings, right? We're going to be quick and we're going to get to the topic at hand, but we want to bring this stuff out first. Read this, King. Psalms 91 verse 1.
God, the book of Psalms, chapter 91 verse 1. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty.
Right. So now another thing about an eagle, right? You can always tell if you outside in an open space, right? When an eagle is flying above you, because why? When you see an eagle flying over you, you see their shadow, right, hitting the ground from the sky. And right. So now when it's talking about the Most High, it's saying the Most High shadow is bigger as well, right? Come on.
God, I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him will I trust.
Come on.
Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence.
Come on.
He shall cover thee with his feathers.
Right. And it's talking again that the Lord will cover the Israelites with his feathers, read.
And under his wings shalt thou trust.
Right.
His truth shall be thy shield and buckler.
Right. So now, go ahead. You can finish that off.
Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that fly by day. Right.
So now let's read this, Isaiah 40 and 31. So now we're not only showing that the wings of the Most High God signifies what? Him guiding us under his shadow and teaching us and instructing us. But now it also goes into what? His wings protecting us from destruction, right? Signifying what? That when the fire of the swords get to flying in the last days, it will be his wings that protect us, right? It will be his wings that guided us during the time when Moses was on the earth, right? So now what else is the Lord's wings signifying? Let's read.
God, the book of Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31.
Come on.
But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength.
He said they that wait upon Yahweh shall renew their strength, right? Come on.
They shall mount up with wings as eagles.
right?
They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not
And,
faint.
and this is also another symbolic thing, letting you know that the ones that wait upon the Most High God will have celestial bodies in the last day, and we will mount up as wings, because also those wings are symbolic to what? Chariots, right? So let's go back to the book of Revelations 12 real quick and finish it out so we can get back to the topic at hand. So now let's go back to Revelations 12 and 14.
Revelation 12:14. And the woman, and to the woman were given two wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place where she is nourished for a time, in times, and a half a time from the face of the serpent.
So remember earlier when we went into this, right? We said when you read the book of Deuteronomy chapter 32, that place of wilderness will be a desert land. So right now, the Lord had us come into America or Babylon the Great, into this wilderness where this place was void of understanding, void of the laws of God, void of the wisdom of the Bible. And this was the place where the Lord would nourish us and guide us and fix us up, right? Let's prove that real quick. Let's get the book of Deuteronomy chapter 12. Revelation 12 and 6. Let's read
Book of
this real
Revelation, chapter 12, verse 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness.
right. This is another thing, right? It's talking about, the male child of Christ, right? Watch this.
Where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there for 1,260 days.
Right now, so now what is this really talking about? This is talking about Babylon, where the Lord will guide us into Babylon. This is the wilderness that God is talking about, because when you think about Mary and Yahushua, they wasn't there no 1,203 score days, right? Let's read this real quick in the book of Revelations chapter 11 and verse number 3.
Con. Revelation chapter 11, verse 3. And I will give power unto my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth.
And who is that talking about? That's talking about us, right? The northern and southern kingdom. So where are we prophesying at right now? We are prophesying in the land of the beast, the land of the wilderness, right? And Babylon the Great, right? So let's keep going, right?
Con. And it's Revelation 12:15.
Mm-hmm.
And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood.
Right. And what is the flood? What is the water that he cast at us? His doctrines, his lies, his media, his images, the whitewashing and the converting of Amalek to our religion, right? But now what are we killing? Keep going. Verse 17.
In the earth, 17.
Right, yeah.
Con.
No, keep reading.
Con. And the earth helped the woman,
Right.
And the earth opened her mouth and
Right.
swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth.
Right. And this is what this devil is doing right now. This devil is witnessing the Most High open up the earth and reveal the truth to the people of the world. Real quick, let's get this real quick. I gotta get it. I ain't gonna be long, King, so you can get it to your topic. Let's get this. Read Psalms chapter 85 and verse number 11.
The book of Psalms, chapter 85 and verse 11.
Right.
Truth shall spring out of the earth.
Right. This is how the Lord is swallowing up the drought and swallowing up the water that this devil is pushing on us. Right. The Bible says that the truth shall spring out of the earth. Read.
And righteousness shall look down from heaven.
And righteousness shall look down from heaven, representing who? Yahweh by Hashem, Yahweh Shai. So now when we go back to this, what is this saying? This is letting you know that the Lord is going to be the one that block all the lies that this devil is trying to put on us during the time that he's nourishing us. But now keep going.
Con. It says, and the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed,
right,
which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Yahweh Shah HaMashiach. Jesus Christ.
And this is coming into a time where these same devils are going to decide to want to make war with us, right? To make war with the remnant of the Israelites who are keeping the commandments of God. Because why? You are making their time short about keeping the commandments. You are making their time short about going out to the highways and byways teaching the Israelites who they are. You are making their time shorter by teaching and exposing the lies that they have been teaching our people for years and years. So now, when you think about this, when you look at this bill that they came out and passed, a lot of people will be simple and think that these devils is focused just on the Middle East. And if you got eyes to see and common sense, they having their way over there. So why would they need to pass this bill to affect people they are already wiping out by the thousands, right? And probably have reached the million mark, right? Who are they putting this bill out to affect in the latter end? It's talking about our people, right? But you know what I'm saying? I know my brother today, you know what I'm saying, part 2 on him. So I ain't gonna try to be too long, but I am gonna come back to that. But I know for the sake of time, we'll pass to the broski, man. Go ahead, King.
Con. All praise the Most High. So we gonna go ahead and get into this thing, right? So first, we want to start off with a video. We got a video prepared for y'all. We're gonna get into this through the Spirit, all right? Let me present this on the screen. Bam. All right. So go ahead and get it. You can see that, King?
Con, I can.
All right. Let me know if you can hear it.
Nope.
And escaped black slaves. The black Seminoles had never been seen before.
So again, before we play this video, we just want to say this is fair use. This is fair use. This is for educational purposes only. But go ahead.
Facts.
Began to form between Native American Seminole tribes
Next
and escaped black slaves. The black Seminoles were a group of freedmen and runaway slaves living in Florida since as early as 1889. Yet, despite the fact that they changed the course of American history, the black Seminoles were, for the most part, forgotten about. So, today, we're going to tell you some things you never knew about the alliance between Seminole Indians and escaped slaves. In the late 1600s, Spanish settlers in Florida were in the middle of a serious conflict with the British residents of Carolina, an area which consisted of modern-day Georgia, as well as North and South Carolina. As a result, they needed a fort that could act as a buffer to protect them. So, in 1681, Fort Mose was founded, just north of St. Augustine. With so many escaped slaves seeking freedom in Spanish Florida, the settlers decided that the fort should be run by freed black men. In total, 38 men ran the fort and established what is now recognized as the very first all-black town in North America. When Florida was later ceded to Britain in the Paris Treaty of 1763, the freedmen were no longer welcome. Many were forced to flee to the Seminole Nation, thus beginning the Seminole Nation's alliance with the Black Seminoles. The relationship between the Black Seminoles and the Native Seminoles was, to say the least, complicated. The two groups were partners of chance who joined together as a team when it was to their benefit and parted ways when it wasn't. They shared much of their respective cultures with one another and further unified themselves by practicing intermarriage over the generations. They were also one of the first American communities to navigate the murky waters of joining two different ethnic groups, something that would become a bit of a motif in American history. While they weren't recognized for it back then, today's scholars are finally beginning to acknowledge the important strides that these two very different groups made by joining together. The home of the Seminole Nation has changed many times and spans across several states and countries. After the War of 1812, both the Native and Black Seminoles moved from northern Florida into the southern and central areas of the state. They were doing their best to get away from encroaching white settlers, which turned out to be a prudent decision. In the early 1820s, a large group even had to escape to the Bahamas. After the Second Seminole War...
All right, so before you play that again, right, let's just give a recap. So what is these people talking about here, right? When you look at the beginning of the video, he referred to what some people would think that the Seminole Indians were a people that was forgotten. And when you think about in this world today, they have been forgotten, right? A lot of people don't recognize the Seminole Indians for who they really are, what their God-given nationality is, right? So real quick, bro, real quick, while this is loading up, can you pull up the book of Romans chapter 11 and verse number 1, right? So, and as you read here, right, he's referencing who? To the Seminoles and the natives, right? And they're calling both of these people black because when you think about it, these are the people who come from the east. these are Israelites, right? So let's pull this up real quick. Let's show why we are showing this, because like this man said in the beginning of this, a lot of people would think that the Seminole and Native Indians were people that were lost. They wouldn't know who they are. Romans 11 verse 1, King.
Kind of book of Romans, chapter 11, verse 11.
1.
Book of Romans, chapter 11, and verse number 1, and it reads, it says this, I say then, have God cast away his people? God forbid.
So this is Paul letting you know that God did not cast away the 12 tribes of Israel, right? Come on.
For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin.
Go on.
God have not cast away his people, which he foreknew.
And he says, God did not cast away the people which he foreknew. So you got to think about it. Before the Lord created the Israelites, he foreknew us. God knew what we were going to be before the world knew. Before the world was created, God knew that we were going to be the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. Go ahead.
What ye not that the scripture said in Elias, how he have make of intercession to God against Israel, saying.
That's it right there. That's it right there. So now we going into the Seminole Indians tonight. One more precept, bro, before you go back to your video. Genesis chapter 49, Baba Kashaf. Right. So let's show you in the latter times how Moses also even referenced and said how you would be able to identify the Reubenites, right? The Seminoles, right? Go up 49:3. Can you going down? Right. So now start at verse number 2. Genesis 49:2. And if you don't know, we are doing this series strictly focusing on the Seminole and Native Americans, which would be the tribes of Reuben and the tribe of Gad. We did a little history showing you what they did to us last week, but now this week we want to kind of run it back and, you know, take steps back and show you and recognize the true identity of these people. Come on.
Genesis 49:2. Gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, in the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, in the excellency of power.
He said these people will be excellent in dignity, in having dignity, and also excellent in having power, right? So as we read into these things tonight, we're going to look into a royal type people of the land, right? When you think about when these devils came over here, they couldn't come out and say certain things like calling these people savages, because they was well grounded, well established, and a real royal people, right? So this is what we're showing you tonight. And in this video, I know we just allowing it just to play on without tapping into it. But when you look into this video is going to show you how royal these people were. And yes, these were black people, right? These one the $5 Edomites that you see portraying to be Israelites, right? And I'm gonna just show real quick a glimpse of it with this book. Can you see this? When they say we were royal in dignity, had royalty and dignity, what do you see in this book right here, right? You see the real Seminole Indians, the Reubenites, dressed up as ancient men with mitres on their head, and this was at the White House, right? So we're going to show a lot of history tonight, showing you that these people who the world knows as Indians were indeed Israelites and royal black Israelites. But go ahead, King.
Con, man, like you were saying. So, can you see it?
Yeah, it's still circling.
Yeah, let me try to refresh this joint. All right, y'all should be able to hear it now.
Unlike any that had ever been seen before, began to form between Native American Seminole tribes and escaped black. To tell you some things you never knew about the alliance between Seminole Indians and escaped slaves. In the late 1600s, Spanish settlers in Florida were in the middle of a serious conflict with the British residents of Carolina, an area which consisted of modern-day Georgia, as well as North and South Carolina. As a result, they needed a fort that could act as a buffer to protect them. So in 1681, Fort Mose was founded, just north of St. Augustine. With so many escaped slaves seeking freedom in Spanish Florida, the settlers decided that the fort should be run by freed black men, In total, 38 men ran the fort and established what is now recognized as the very first all-black town in North America.
Right.
When Florida was later ceded to Britain in the Paris Treaty of 1763, the freedmen were no longer welcome.
Right. So check this out. Now, first they just had a city where it was the first established black town. Right. The British end up taking back over. So now you're gonna see how the so-called blacks during that time, how they're gonna come down from that area, the North Carolinas and the Georgia area, and they're gonna come down and shift down and start to get up with the Seminole Indian tribes, right, in Florida.
Many were forced to flee to the Seminole Nation.
Thus, that's what it's saying is many of them start to flee down.
Beginning the Seminole Nation's alliance with the Black Seminoles.
Right.
The relationship between the Black Seminoles and the Native Seminoles was, to say the least, complicated. The two groups were partners of chance who joined together as a team when it was to their benefit and parted ways when it wasn't. They shared much of their respective cultures with one another. And
right. So again, they came together as a brotherhood, and this the crazy part. We think about it. They came together, two people that at one point in time lived in the same area, right? And then I'm gonna get this precept right here. We bring this out on the highways and byways because we doing the same thing now that we did back then, right? Coming together and doing what? Coming together, banding together to do what? Go against our enemy, right? And we're going against our enemy, not how they was going against our enemy with the swords. We going through with the spiritual sword. We coming at our enemy with this truth, telling our people that they're the Israelites of the Bible, right? But I'm gonna get this in Zephaniah chapter 2, right? Get this precept real quick, because it says, "Oh, gather yourself together, O nation not desired." And at this time, right, our nation, the so-called blacks, they weren't desired by nobody, right? They ain't show one the Native Americans, the Seminoles, right? The so-called white man was trying to run them out of the land, and the Spaniards as well, right? So let me get this precept, right? Let me get this precept, Zephaniah 2:1. It says, "Gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired." Right? It says, "But bring forth before the decree bring forth." I'm gonna start right there. But again, our people came together like they did now. They're doing the same thing now in these last days, right? The same way they band together. We gotta band together, but band together under the truth, not band together in Christianity. Not band together in Islam, not band together in being a Buddhist or being Rastafarianism. We gotta band together and keep these commandments that Most High commanded us to do in the times before, right? And I want to go back to the precept the brother had brought out, right, in the book of Genesis, right? Let's go to this. This Genesis 49 and verse 3. It says, "Reuben, thou my firstborn, my might, in the beginning of my strength, the essency of dignity and the ecstasy of power," right? The Seminole Indians was a very powerful nation, right? And we actually go into the history. Those were the last of the Native Americans or the last Northern Kingdom that was fighting back against Esau, right? They was put up to fight the most, right? It was said that the so-called white man said that's one of their fiercest enemies. Right? It says, "Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, but thou wentest up to thy father's bed." It says, I want to harp on this. It says, "Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel." And when you actually go into this, right, during that time that you had all these things going on, you had the British, right, but also you had different Native American tribes fighting amongst each other. So you had infighting against the Native American groups that were at one point in time, they was in cahoots together, they was trading together, they was living in harmony and peace. Now they going at it, and not only going at it with each other, but they also going at it with the so-called white man. And it says, "Thou shalt not excel," because at one point in time, they actually had this land, right? They had the land, right? They ruled a big part of Florida, but then what happened, right? The so-called white man being taken over, the Spanish took it over, right? It says, "Because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch," right? So because of that, the Lord and it's an actual curse when you think about it, right? Because as time going on, you see now through prophecy that the so-called the so-called Seminoles, because they call the so-called Seminoles, their true name would be Reubenites, right? That they end up being overran by the so-called white man. They didn't see, at one point in time they was powerful, right? At one point in time they was in rulership, right? But now they're subject to the so-called white man. Now they're stuck on reservations, right? Now we barely can see. Now they're scattered around, right? And I don't want to jump ahead, but some of them even took routes to go to Mexico, right? They even dispersed to Mexico, right? We're gonna see. I got a slide on that as well, right? So let me jump down and let me go to this precept too. This Genesis 49 verse 19. It says, Gad, a troop shall overcome him, right? But he shall overcome at the last, right? It says a troop shall overcome him. What is the troop that overcame the Gad? It was so-called white men, right? And when you think about it again, you had Cherokee, right? Choctaw, right? All these nations, all these tribes was going at it, right? And they end up still losing, right, to the so-called white man. They was overcome. It says, but he shall overcome at the last. And when it says overcome at the last, it's talking about in the last days, right? In the last days, when they start to wake up and realize who they are and realize that they're God's chosen people and repent and keep these commandments, that's when they're really going to truly overcome. Because we know that once the Israelites repent these last days and come together, right, the elect is sealed. Once the elect is sealed, right, it's wrapped for Babylon, right? It's wrapped for Babylon, right? It's wrapped for the so-called white man as a totality. And then that's going to usher in, right, the transition of the Israelites in rulership, right, and no more in captivity under the banner of the so-called white man, right? But let me get back to this, and then we're not gonna watch this whole video. We're not gonna watch this whole video. We're just gonna watch a little bit, and then I'm gonna jump into this PDF I got.
Further unified themselves by practicing intermarriage over the generations. They were also one of the first American communities to navigate the murky waters of joining two different ethnic groups, something that would become a bit of a motif in American history. While they weren't recognized for it back then, today's scholars are finally beginning to acknowledge the important strides that these two very different groups made by joining together. The home of the Seminole Nation has changed many times and spans across several states and countries. After the war...
So when it's talking about it spans from different states and countries, because you got to think about this too, which is the slide we're going to get to. They end up leaving Florida and they travel to Mexico. And they actually got a La Negro. It's a place in Mexico called La Negro, right? Which is actually the place where they dwell now, right? If I
1812, both the native and black Seminoles moved from northern Florida into the southern and central areas of the state. They were doing their best to get away from encroaching white settlers, which turned out to be a prudent decision. In the early 1820s, a large group even had to escape to the Bahamas. After the Second Seminole War...
So, right, and this, so basically now it's going into different parts where they went to the Bahamas, right? And you see, it says the second Seminole War. So they're constantly in battle with. They was constantly in battle with the so-called white men, right? So now we're gonna jump into this PDF, right? We're gonna jump into this PDF, and we're gonna read. We're not gonna read this whole PDF either. I just want to get some brief parts of it and go into it, right? So it says this right here. It says the rich. It says the Gullah. It says the Gullah, rice, slavery, and the Sierra Leone American connection, right? So it says black Seminoles, Gullahs who escaped from slavery. The black Seminoles are a small offshoot of the Gullah who escaped from the rice plantations in South Carolina and Georgia. They built their own settlements on the Florida frontier fought a series of wars to preserve their freedom. They and were scattered across North America. They have played a significant role in American history, but has never received the recognition they deserve. Right? Because when we think about it, so-called white men don't want to give anybody recognition from fighting against them. Right? They don't want to give nobody any recognition for fighting against them. All right, so it says this. Some Gullah slaves managed to escape from coastal South Carolina and Georgia south into the Florida Peninsula. In the 18th century, Florida was a vast tropical wilderness covered with jungles and malaria-ridden swamps. The Spanish claimed Florida, but they used it only as a buffer between the British colonies and their own settled territories farther south. Right? They wanted to keep Florida as a dangerous wilderness frontier, so they offered a refuge and to escape slaves. So what happened was, so you had the Spanish, right? And this is where you have the Esau against Esau, right? They both Edomites. So you had the Spanish, right? They're saying they kept Florida as a buffer. They kept it as a buffer. So what they would do, they would offer some of the slaves freedom if they would join their ranks in their armies. So at that time, you had some so-called blacks, right, that escaped slavery from Georgia and South Carolina. They would sign up for the army and they would sign up for the Spanish army, right? And then they would go back, they would go fight for the Spaniards, right? So you had some escaped slaves, they would go fight and join the ranks with the Spaniards. Then you had some on the other hand that would join the Seminoles, right? They would join the Seminole tribes and get intermingle into those tribes, right? And we're gonna get into that, right? How much it was a pinnacle part for not just the so-called white men, but for the Seminole Indians, because they actually came up together, as in they helped each other, right? Trading, language barriers, different things like that, right? So I'm gonna keep reading. It says, so they offered a refugee to escape slaves and renegade Indians from the neighboring South Carolina and Georgia. The Gullahs were establishing their own free settlements in the Florida wilderness by at least the late 1700s. They built separate villages of thatched roof houses surrounded by fields of corn and swamp rice, and they maintained friendly relations with the mixed population of refugee Indians. And they actually had a great relationship, right? They had a very great relationship. I'm gonna jump down. Like I said, I don't want to read this whole thing, so I'm gonna jump down, right? I'm gonna jump down right here. It says, but the Gullahs were physically more suited to the tropical climate and possessed an indispensable knowledge of tropical agriculture. And without their assistance, the Indians would not have been able to cope effectively with the Florida environment. So here you have them actually working together, right? You had them working together. And then that's how you know again, right, that one, that we the Israelites, when you read about the Israelites in the Bible were a very agricultural people, right? They had a lot of their funds and things, how they became a great nation was through agriculture, right? Taking care of cows, cattle, right? Wheat, barley, grains, olives, right? Different things. Our people will grow many different things. And that's when you see different parts of our history or our feast days, right? When you go into different parts of the feast days, you got Passover, right? Passover, from Passover on down, right, to first fruits, right? Then you got the last one, right? Not the last one, but the one further in the year, right? You had the Ingathering, right? Which was the Feast of Tabernacles, right? And a lot of our feast days were surrounded around our agriculture abilities, right? And we would gather crops. So they carried that same knowledge that they had over from our homeland, and they brought that to the America, right? And they would help out the Native American brothers, right? Their Seminole brothers, or Northern Kingdom brothers per se, right? It says, the two groups led an independent in the wilderness of northern Florida, rearing several generations of children in freedom, they recognized the American settlers and slave owners as their common enemy. As their common enemy. So you got to think about it. We think about this at the end of the day, right? Regardless of what tribe you from, you still an Israelite, right? And no matter, I'm gonna get this precept right quick. Let me get this. In the book of Psalms, chapter 83, right? So when these nations came together, right, to disband us, right, as a nation, it wasn't just saying they're gonna disband us, right, or take us down as we just gonna take down Southern Kingdom. Oh no, we just gonna take down Northern Kingdom. No, they said they're gonna take down Israel as a whole. So all these, it's not just saying, we just can't say, well, yeah, it was us, it was Southern Kingdom. We really got dirty done the dirtiest from the so-called white man. No, all of us as a nation, and not just by the so-called white man, by all these nations, right, have came against the Israelites as a whole. So I'm gonna read this. It says, God implored to confound his enemies, right? And all these enemies are the enemies of the Israelites, right? All these people are enemies to the Israelites. So when we come together, we realize as a nation that we have a common enemy, not just as, all right, we all have a different enemy than me. No, we have the same enemy. And that's all these nations that has oppressed us, right? That has stripped us from our name, our heritage, and our nationality, right? So I'm gonna go to this. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 83, and we're gonna go to I'm gonna start at verse 2. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and have consulted against thine hidden ones. And so when we look at what happened to our forefathers, right? It wasn't just crafty counsel that happened to the so-called black man that sailed off the western coast of Africa, right? And it was taken to the different parts of the Americas, to the Bahamas, to Central America, to South America. No, they also took crafty counsel against the Native American as well. All those different faulty treaties that they signed, right? When you remember what Andrew Jackson did, right? The man that's I want to say he's on the $5 bill, right? When you remember what these people did, that crafty counsel was just against us. It was against us as a total, as a whole nation, right? It says, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation. So when you look at it from a total standpoint, they said, let's cut them off on every point, right? Because when Christopher Columbus came over, he knew what he was dealing with. He knew what he was dealing with. We know that he got his information, right, from 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse 40 on down. So he knew that our brothers was already over here, right? So these devils, they said, hey, man, we going to break them down, the ones from this side and the ones that's on that side. No matter where they at, we going to break this nation. No, they can't escape us, right? We going to break them down on every level. Even when they come together. It got so bad, right? It got so bad that's what, when you pay attention to the video, they said they left, the Seminoles, they left because the encroaching, because of the Edomites coming down, taking over Florida. They had to leave because the so-called white man was pushing them out of their own homeland, right? But it says, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance, right? It says, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. And then when you look at the so-called white man and his tribes within themselves, right? Because the Spaniards, they all the same. They all the same. The Spaniards, the British, right? The ones over here, they all the same. But they still was in cahoots to do what? Overtake us as a nation. Even though they were still fighting each other, they still was in cahoots to overtake us as a nation. right? It says, and that's when it says, for they consulted together, right? The tabernacles of Edom, in the Ishmaelites, and so forth and so forth. As you read on this thing, I'm not gonna read this whole thing, but as you see, all these nations came together in a consent, right, to tear us down as a nation. So we will no longer remember who we are, right? And that has happened, right? When you look at history and you look at the different things that has happened to us as a nation and as a people, right? Even when we came together and they came together and created their own communities, right? You know, so-called white men still came down, putting pressure down on them. But there's also this though, right? Let me go to this precept right quick, because you got to understand this. You know, even though, because I want to touch on this too, even though we could come together, right? But if we don't come together and keep these commandments, it doesn't mean a thing, right? Yeah, we can come together, and they did that. They came together, right, as a community. They married, right? They did trading. They had some brothers that was interpreters for them. A lot was going on. They had a lot of motion going on, but it wasn't no commandment keeping that was going on, right? So let me go to this real fast. I'm gonna go to this Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68, the classic, right? Well, I'm gonna go to 64 first, right? Read it says, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, right? So the Lord, he did the scattering. He scattered us amongst all these nations. So what that means is it's gonna take the Most High to do what? To bring us back together as a nation, right? I want to read that says from the one end of the earth even to the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods. And that's exactly what our people did. No matter where we were, we were still worshiping other gods. And like we was talking about in our previous lesson, right? You had the so-called Native Americans. They were worshiping the spirit of the land, worshiping the land, worshiping the trees, right? They had gods for the water spirit, right? The spirit of the tree or the animal spirit. They had all these different things that they was worshiping rather than the Most High God, right? So with doing that, the Lord always sends out judgment for us not serving him, right, and him alone. Okay, so I'm gonna jump down to verse 68 because it's the important part. Because it's a part of, yeah, we can come together, but if we don't come together and keep these commandments, it's all for naught. And you see that when you go into dang, they did come together, dang, they did establish a community. But when it's all said and done, the Lord broke it down. All right, so let's it says Deuteronomy 28 and verse 68. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. And when you go into it, not only was the so-called black man, right, on a slave ship, right, also the so-called Mexicans, right, the Native Americans, so-called Native Americans, they was also on slave ships as well. They just went to different places. So we all fall in that category of being a slave and being on that boat of transportation, right, going to this way and that. We all played our part, right, in the transatlantic slave trade. Every last one of us, right? So it says, when I say every last one of us, I mean northern and southern kingdom, right? By the way whereof I spake unto thee, and thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for a bondman and bondwoman, and no man shall buy you. So no man shall redeem you. So even though we did have points of freedom, we're still here in the land of our captivity. We have not been redeemed, right? We have not been redeemed for being scattered, right? It comes back to, again, the Israelites realizing who they are, right, and keeping the commandments of God, right? And I wanna just pass that up with this precept right here, Deuteronomy 30, right here. I'm read this right quick. It says 30 and 1. It says, and it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations. So the Israelites was supposed to, hey, remember one that Most High, he cursed us, right? He did all these different things and call it to mind amongst all these nations, right? Will the Lord thy God have driven thee, and shalt return unto the Lord thy God. We are supposed to return to the Most High God, and shall obey his voice according to all that I commanded this day, thou and thy children, with all thine heart and with all thy soul. So when it comes to us to come together as a nation, just as the black Seminoles, the blacks and the Seminoles did in that time before, we got to come together and keep the commandments of God and returning to the Lord, right? And keeping the commandments, right? And being obedient to him. That's what we got to come together and do, right? And it says that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity. So until we do that, we still gonna be in a situation where we come together. We might have some motion going on for a little bit, and then next thing you know, it's getting broken down. Just like how it happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had motion in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but what happened? Like, hey, Lord put an end to that, right? Of course, it was a so-called white man, but he's just a sword of the Most High. That's it. He's just a sword of the Most High, right? To judge his people. But it says that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations. So until that point in time where we come together and keeping the commandments, and that's going to be the elect, because we know most of Israel not going to do that. But once the elect is sealed and the elect come together and they repent, right, and they get sealed, right, that's going to be wraps for this place. And that's why we out here going on the highways and byways, pushing out these videos so our people can know who they are according to the Bible, so they can know that they God's chosen people and that they need to repent and keep the commandments of God that the Most High God have given us as a nation, right? So our wisdom amongst the nations, right? And then we'll get the heck up out of here, right? So let me and if you have some King, you can say something before I go to my next thing I was gonna do. I was gonna get this. I was gonna go into the books.
Come, real quick. I don't want to be long. You know what I'm saying? Just gonna show a couple of things. So, real quick, as you brought up, right, the wars of the indigenous people to the land and things of that nature. Let's go back, right? If you could pull up on the screen, First Chronicles chapter 5 again. Let's pull up First Chronicles chapter 5 again. And what we're going into is talking about the Seminole and so-called Native Americans, right? So, you know what I'm saying? Let's read that.
Book of First Chronicles chapter 5 verse 1. Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but for as much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel.
Right. So now it's a Reubenite's birthright was given up, right? So now let's jump down to verse 18, though, because verse 18 where I want to start at, right? So we are talking about Reuben and Gad throughout this history, recognizing who they are in their true depiction. So let's read verse 18.
Verse 18. The sons of Reuben and the Gadites and half the tribe of Manasseh of valiant men.
Right. These were valiant men, right? These men were capable men of war. These are the things that we're going to display tonight, right? He touched a little bit on how when you think about the indigenous people of the land, right? When they went to war with the Edomites over here, right? Reuben was not trying to go out, right? Reuben was not trying to go. Like we got books and articles going into those wars, but for the sake of time, I might not be able to bring it out today. But I want to show you that. I want to show you that the Reuben and Gadites didn't go out like no punks. Now, Gad, you know what I'm saying? It's my tribe. I love them, right? But sometimes we kind of folded to certain folly, right? Concerning the Apache and the Cherokee Indians, right? And submitting to the slavery of our people, right, of the tribe of Judah. But hey, that wasn't all of us, but that's neither here or there. But the point is, our people were valiant men at this time, right? Come on.
Men able to bear buckler and sword, and to shoot with bow, and skillful in war.
And skillful in war. So now, if you might get the book of Hosea, chapter 7, and verse number 9. Right? So get the book of Hosea, chapter 7, and verse number 9. Right? So what are we showing you here? We are showing you that the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are Israelites, are the same people. But today we want to harp on the so-called Indians. These people are in relative skin tone and feature of the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, because you got to think about it, right? We all come from the same people. So now let's read this. Start at verse number 8.
Con, Hosea 7 and 8. Ephraim, he have mixed himself among the people. Ephraim is a cake not turned.
So now when you think about this Ephraim here, it's not just talking about the tribe of Ephraim. This is talking about the northern kingdom of Israel, and it's referring to the Assyrian captivity. When we were amongst the Assyrians, we mixed ourselves amongst them. The Assyrians tried to cast us away. They sent strangers to live in our lands that we had conquered, like Samaria and other parts of the land you can read about, right? But also it says what? Ephraim is a cake not turned. When you think about a cake not turned, this is going into different varieties of brown, right? One side of the cake might be lighter than the other side, like when you refer to a pancake. One side of the cake, if you cook a pancake too much on one side, that side might be dark brown, and then when you lessly cook it on the other side, what that less side would be lightish brown, right? More lights toned it, right? Read the next verse.
Con, strangers have devoured his strength.
Right. So when you think about the strength, what is your strength? Our features, our strength is our skin tone, right? The strangers have took their strength, their dignity, right? Our woolly hair was our strength. When you think about Samson, the woolly hair texture he had, that was considered a strength, right? Read me one more in Jeremiah chapter 12 and verse number 9. Jeremiah chapter 12 and verse number 9. I'm going to show something real quick. Let me see. Can I pull up my photos?
Jeremiah 12 and verse 9.
Uh-huh.
My heritage is unto me as a speckled bird.
It says what?
My heritage is unto me as a speckled bird.
Right. So the Bible says, my heritage is unto me as a speckled bird. What does that signify? A bird of different colors, right? Chiefly of different varieties of brown, right? And this is what we're going to show tonight. Come on.
The birds round about are against her. Come ye, assemble all the beasts of the field, come to devour.
All right, so now I come to devour. So real quick, I just want to show some stuff to substantiate what you bringing out tonight and prove that what the people that you are referencing right now tonight, you know what I'm saying, is who? The tribe of Reuben, right? So real quick, I'm just going to show this and I'm going to give it back to you. I just want to show imagery because the Bible says imagery is everything, right? So let me, the heck is going on? All right, there we go. All right, so now this is from the book The Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. The Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. And I'm not going to read too long in this book for the sake of time for my brother, but I am going to read a couple things, right? So just if you can, bro, real quick. Matter of fact, I'll do it myself. So this is the book, The Lost Tribes and Promised Land. It says a lost tribe discovered in New York. So this is all going hand in hand on what we're talking about tonight. It says in 1644, a Portuguese Moreno named Antonio de Montezinos arrived in Amsterdam after having lived for some years in South America and proceeded to tell the leaders of the recently established Jewish community there a story that caused them to think of him later as a later-day Eldad the Danite, right? So let's skip over, right? So it says, upon his return to Cartagena, the Judaizing Montezinos had found himself accused by the Inquisition and put in prison. Praying for salvation in his cell one day, he was reciting what was by then a standard formula among New World Morenos. Blessed be the name of the Lord, who has not made me an idolater, Why? Why would he say that? Let's think about what's going on in the islands and in Americas at this time. A barbarian, a Negro, an Indian. What is he saying? Blessed be the name of Yahweh who have not labeled me as these bywords here. When suddenly be stopped, those Indians, he told himself, they are Hebrews. Pondering this thought incredulously and yet growing with conviction, he resolved that if he was ever released, he would seek out the Indian Francisco and try to learn the truth. So now let's jump down to when he meets the Indian Francisco. What the two men were soon back in the rugged mountains in which Francisco had made his initial revelation, marching relentlessly for a week before they came to an halt. Watch this. It was a Saturday, the Sabbath. Montesinos makes a point of telling us, and they had come to a river larger than the Douro, and are there echoes of the Sabbatean. And all of this, what is the Sabbatean reverencing of the Sabbath? Here, Francisco announced, is where your brothers will be seen. So now he's telling him, hey, you want to learn about the Indians? Now you're going to learn about the Indians. Watch this. Waving a banner high in the air, the Indian guide soon was greeted by a puff of smoke far beyond the other bank of the river. In response to his signal, the two men waited. Eventually, a canoe appeared bearing three men and a woman, all of them Indians. So, interesting. They say Indians again, right? To the place where Francisco and Montesinos were standing at the water's edge. The woman got off and spoke to Francisco in an Indian tongue that Montesinos could not understand, although he could perceive what? That he was being identified in the conversation. She then turned to her male companions to explain the situation. Upon hearing her words, they rose, went over to Montesinos, and to utter his astonishment said, Shema Yisrael Adana Allahino Adino Ihad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. They had recited in Hebrew the fundamental credo of Judaism. But watch this, though. A brief conversation then ensued in their common ancestral tongue, according to Montesinos, whose fluency in it is almost as perplexing to the reader of his narrative as is that of his three mysterious new companions. They told him that they were themselves of the tribe of Reuben. Focus on that. These Indians, these three Indians and the woman told this man that they were of the tribe of Reuben, and that what? That the tribe of Joseph lived on an island nearby. What is he making reference to? The Caribbean island, right? The day when they were at last to issue forth into the world was coming soon. What is he referencing? What is said in 2nd Ezra 13 and 40? Because these people knew at the last days that what? Yahushua would make manifest who the real 12 tribes of Israel were, and they would reign throughout the entire world. They explained, but in the meantime, they could not allow visitors to cross over to them, right? They were willing to make an exception in the near future, however, on account of their need for education, for though they spoke Hebrew, they could not read or write it. Wrote Montesinos, send them 12 bearded men to be their teachers. Now, why would it tell them send them 12 bearded men, right? Because these were customs that the Israelites followed. So I ain't want to go too much in that. I just wanted to show that history, but then also I just got one more book, King, if you don't mind, and I'm gonna give it back to you. I want to show y'all this. This is another book. I can't show all my stash, right? You guys, brothers, be, you know, hey, feds be watching, but you know what I'm saying? That's neither here or there. So first, I want to show y'all through the spirit, if it allows me. Let me see, Salakia. I want to show y'all about this book, right? Let me go back up. I want to show y'all imagery is everything. So down, the title of this book is We Are Not Just Africans, the Black Native Americans, right? All right, so now let's move on. Introduction, right? Going into the introduction of the African American, I mean the Native Americans, right? But they're calling them the Black Native Americans. So when you look at this, this is what is describing a Choctaw, right? Watch this. This is a picture and a depiction of a Choctaw Indian. So it says Choctaw. At the time, many people laughed at us because they only saw Lakota ad Apache Native Americans on TV. Today, because of the World Wide Web, there are numerous pictures of Black Native Americans, right? They call them BNAs, right? I like that. Black Native Americans, right? So now let me just go through my notes real quick so I don't have to have my brother waiting too long. Right? Now, look at these different pictures, right? Look at these different pictures. You see different shades of cake unturned. You got one brown, one dark. And if you look closely at their skin, look at how evil Esau is and how they try to taint certain pictures. Look at how dark brown his body is up here, but then his legs a little lighter, right? So now it says the Black Native American of North America were mainly descendants of the Paleo Americans and Africans who sailed to the Americas between 12,000 BC to 1492 AD. So now let's go get a fun fact. Let's get a fun fact here. It says the Europeans called the people they found in the Americas Indians because when they met these populations, they were very dark skinned, like the Dravidians or black people of South India, right? So they would tell us, right? So let's keep going real quick. Let's keep going real quick. All right. For the sake of time, I'm gonna go through all. I just want to show you some of these pictures. All right, I jumped the gun. All right, so now some more imagery, right? This is an image from Brazil of Luzia, right? Luzia of Brazil. Archaeologists have reconstructed the faces of ancient Americans from Brazil and Mexico. These faces are based on a skeletal remains dating back to the 12,000 BC. Researchers working on these ancient people note that they resemble Negroes instead of contemporary Native Americans. So when you look at the imagery that they reconstructed of these features and these bones, they said that, hey, these Native American or indigenous people of this land, hey, man, these folks resemble the same Negroes that's being enslaved and brought from West Africa, right? So now let's keep going. Look at these different pictures. And you look at this picture, what writing is there in that stone right there? And look, when you look at this man's head, he has a mitre on his head, but look at the pants he has. So when you see this, it says, hold on, let me see, can I redo the whole reading? It says, can see the Malayan royal from Brazil wear the sleeveless tunic, skull cap breeches reaching down to the knees. So he has on the skull cap breeches reaching down to the knees. I wonder what those things are hanging off his breeches, right? But let me keep going for the sake of time. When you look at this, these pictures are showing you that the indigenous people at the time were black. They wore fringes, right? Look at these different pictures. These images are showing that what? These people were black and wore fringes. These native so-called Indians and Reubenites were black and wore fringes. Watch this. At the first, the Europeans identified the black Native Americans as Indians, but over time, because the Carolina Indians were predominantly Negroes or black, both African and black Native American slaves were called Negroes, especially after the Yamasee War, right? The black Native Americans, for the most part, were peaceful people when the British colonists arrived. They hunted and fished or grew crops to support themselves. The British from Barbados, upon settling upon the Carolinas, began to enslave the black Native Americans to take their land and force them to work on their plantations. So what are we showing you here? We are showing you different emphasis of the Native Americans and Seminole Indians that they speak about in the world. These were Israelites. Look at the fringes. Look at the fringes. And they, you know, this picture kind of bugged out, right? This picture kind of bugged out of these California Indians. But hey, these people were black people, right? Look at this, black people. Look at the hair texture. These were black people. So when you think about this, this is why when you look throughout the South today, when you think about Mississippi, a lot of our people always say we got Indian in us, right? You see them certain dark-skinned black people with high cheekbones, especially out of Florida. You see all these fast, high-talented, high cheekbone football players, you know what I'm saying, that's expiring. You look at how fast Muhammad Ali was. Hey, man, these were Israelites who co-called come from the tribe of Gad and the tribe of Reuben, right? This is my last one I want to show, King, and I'm gonna pass it off to you, King. So looking at this, it says Black Native American hair textures. Many Black Native Americans had straight hair for some reason. Why? Hey, only Yahweh knows, right? But look at these people. These were dark-skinned people, right? People of different varieties of brown. Look at this. These were dark-skinned people, man. I don't know where they get the pale faces from. You know what I'm saying? Unless they paid $5, right? So, you know what I'm saying? When you look at these images, hey, we are those people. But that's all I wanted to show for the moment. And I'm gonna give it back to you, King. I just wanted to show that, man, what when you look at hold on, take that off. Take that off. This is watching. Hold on. All right, so I just wanted to show when you see what's going on in the world that what we are those people, right? And we are showing you, right, recognizing who these so-called Black, Seminole, and Native Indians are. They are the Israelites. So let me read this real quick. This is the book of Hosea, chapter 3 and verse 3. And I said unto her, thou shalt abide for me many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man. So will I be also for thee. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, and without a price. And without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without teraphim. So we would lose everything about our nationality and culture, even dating back to our image, right? But let's read what verse 5 says. Afterward shall the children of Israel return. And this is what you see right now. This is why the Most High is blessing us with the Spirit to go back and get these history books, right? And line them up with the Bible, because as what you can see right now, Esau back then, right, they made sure with great detail that they did what? They put each other on game who this was for. When you read all this information, they didn't have these books public for the world at the time. They were writing these books and sending them amongst their peers to do what? Teach them and educate them on the people that they're dealing with, and show them why in the Bible these things must take place, and also showing you in the Bible when it references what? That, hey, the devil will be wrath because he knows that he had only but a short time. So let me read this one time and pass it. It says, afterwards shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. Right? And so this is what you see right now. Us coming back, returning to the Lord and seeking him in the latter days. But you got it, bro.
Con, that's right. All right, so let me go ahead. So this book, these images I'm gonna bring out is from the book, The Black Seminoles. The Black Seminoles from that book. So let me go ahead and start off. All right. So I'm gonna read this right quick. It says, this is what it says. Our people lived in Texas for over 100 years. Before that, we were in Mexico, where some of us still live. And before that, we were in Oklahoma. And even earlier than that, in Florida. And before that, we came from Africa. So it's showing they know exactly where they came from. So when it says that we came from Africa, they come from what? Israel. That's where our homeland was. Our homeland, what homeland is? That's our homeland, right? It says, in our travels, we have never lost an awareness of our identity. Now they kind of going off with that one, because we actually did lose our identity. We actually did forget. A lot of our people don't know where we come from, right? So I just want to bring this out, and that was from Miss Charles Emily Wilson, Black Seminole from Texas. So they understand that, hey, we do come from Africa. Well, not Africa. We come from Israel. That's our homeland. We are the Israelites according to the Bible. All right. So let's get to another page. So I can take that one out. Please. Wait, hold on. Bear with me. Remove that image. All right, boom. So let's get into this one. All right, let's get into this one. It says the year 1812 was a difficult one for American citizens. They had to defend their hard-earned independence once again, fighting the British. right? It was not a good time to be born, but during the tumultuous year, a young black woman living among Seminole Indians gave birth to a son in the wilds of the Florida Alachua, Savannah West, and St. Augustine. She named him John. Her identity is unknown, as is her baby's father. Perhaps he was the Seminole tribesman, Charles Cavallo, who may have owned her. So now this is going into one of the a man by the name of John, right? This brother John, he went off and he led a lot of wars, right, with the Seminole Indians, with the black Seminole Indians. He led a lot of wars, and that goes back into the precept that the brother brought out, right? In First Chronicles chapter 5, right? We were some mighty warriors. We knew how to get go to war, right? We knew how to put a sword what to do with a sword in our hand. We knew how to handle a bow, right? But I'm gonna keep reading. It says, this child of obscure origins would later become a man of many names and varied roles, from Florida to Texas through the Indian Territory in Mexico. John would doggedly pursue one goal: freedom for himself and his people, right? And we always have some type of hero, right? We had heroes like Nat Turner, right? We had heroes like, Martin Luther King and so forth and so forth. But when it comes to really our people getting redeemed, it's going to take more than just a hero to be born. It's going to take the Most High Yahweh Shai and us to come back to our heritage, right? So let me go to another one, right? Another page. So I want to kind of get y'all a backdrop of who was going to. So this man John, right, led our people to a lot of victories, right? So madness. So let me go. All right, get the next page over here. All right, and then we remove this one. All right, now let's do this. All right, so it says this, right? U.S. troops were expected to assist them. All right, obviously, local authorities was an elastic term. Then on March 14, 1812, the so-called patriots, mainly Georgians, right, hoisted their flag, boosted by federal gunboats. They moved swiftly. On March 18th, they seized Alma Island, northeastern of modern Jacksonville, and presented to General Matthews. So this kind of going into the war, right? It's going to the war between the Georgians and the British, right? It says the Patriots then marched south within a month. They had besieged St. Augustine, right, capital of East Florida, right, the city's capitulation, right, and with it, the whole Spanish province, right. So at this time, the Spanish they took over this territory at the time, right. And if you did not know, St. Augustine was actually one of the oldest cities in the United States, right. It says this. It seemed inevitable, although the entire garrison consisted of only about 400 men, mostly untrained local militia. The Spaniards still possessed two potential sources of military strength: Florida Seminole Indians and blacks. Right? So these nations, it said they had untrained local militia. Right? So, but they knew they had strength in what? The Seminole Indians and the blacks. Because they knew that our people was a fierce nation. They knew that our people was good at warrior tactics. They knew these things, right? So I'm gonna jump down. Right? It says, although the tribes people faced losing their homes to the land-hungry American settlers who would subsequently stream into Florida. And that's what it was talking about before, when the so-called white man, right, doing the things he do, always stealing, robbing, and stealing, right, came in and started to take their land, right? Blacks were confronted by far more serious menace. Those held as vassals by the Seminoles dreaded returning to the strict slavery of the South. So you see our people, they said when they was amongst their brothers, it said they dreaded returning back to slavery. Dreaded. It says, in the numerous free and fugitive blacks who lived among the Indians, many of them slaves from Georgia and South Carolina, or their descendants, felt just as threatened. So it was a lot going on in this time, right? So that's when our people had to come together as a nation, right? And so you started to hear about the Lower Creeks and the Upper Creeks partnering together with the Spanish to overcome the Patriots, right? Which would be the Georgians and the South Carolinas, right? So now I'm not gonna keep reading, right? I'm gonna jump over here to this section over here, right? It says this. Matter of fact, I'm gonna jump up. It says during the 2 decades of English rule, some Seminole chiefs began to buy blacks. So what a lot of people didn't know historically, some Seminoles actually owned blacks, right, as slaves. But it wasn't that I wouldn't use the word as slaves. I would say indentured servants. Just like how the so-called white man had the Irish as indentured servants, we had our brothers and sisters as indentured servants, or the Northern Kingdom had them as indentured servants, not slaves. But it says they in their Lower Creek kin noted the prestige that both the Spanish and English attached to owning slaves. Additionally, British officials had given blacks to some Indian leaders as reward for their services, right? So you have some of our people getting passed down to our people. But when you actually go into the accounts of actual people that was indentured servants to the Seminole Indians, they tell you that it was a total different situation contrary to being enslaved by the so-called white man, right? I'm gonna jump down. It says the blacks, I'm gonna jump down right here. It says one observer reported that more than 10 bushel of corn were demanded. The remainder was kept by the so-called slaves. The blacks soon acquired livestock. So when they was with their brothers, right, they was giving livestock, they was giving corn, they was giving things. It was not like the same thing with the so-called white man, but it's a point I'm getting to. It says at slaughtering time, they supplied the tribes people with fat hog, they going off with that, or a side of beef. It was mutually beneficial relationship. So it wasn't really what you would call slavery, as in chattel slavery under so-called white men. They actually had a relationship with one another. Now I'm gonna show you something, and that shows you how there are Israelites. Because I'm gonna just keep reading. It says the owner provided protection, and the slave paid a modest amount in return. This arrangement was obviously quite different from traditional bondage. So when we think about it, let's go into the law. When you actually have a brother as a servant, or let's go into this Leviticus chapter 25. Right, let's go into the law. Hold on. Let me present my screen so you can understand. So our people was keeping the law, not knowing the law, right? Just Paul even tells you about that in Romans chapter 2. But we're gonna get that first. But let's go into the law, right? How our people, the Seminole Indians, even though they were what you call was or a Hebrew servant, is different than a actual heathen, right? And that's why our people, that's how the Seminoles treated their fellow brothers. They didn't treat the so-called black man as a heathen like the so-called white man did. The so-called white man treated us as if we were heathens, as if we were nothing. They said we 3/5 of a man, right? So let's get into the law. It says, I'm gonna start off at Leviticus 25 and verse 35. It says, if thy brother, right? I'm gonna read this. It says, if thy brother be waxing poor and falling in decay with thee, then thou shalt relieve him. Yea, though he be a stranger or sojourner, that he may live with thee. So when you look at it, at this very time, we was what? We were strangers, right, amongst the Native Americans, because they was at one point in time born in this place, right? We were shipped off from Africa, from the western parts of Africa, because they was already here. So we was the ones that was shipped off the west coast of Africa, right? Planted on these different plantations by the white man. Thus, after being freed or escaping from under the bondage and the oppression of the so-called white man, they would flee to their Northern Kingdom brothers, and their Northern Kingdom brothers would do things as of what we're talking about right now in the law, right? It says this. I'm gonna jump down to verse verse 39. It says, if thy brother that dwelleth by thee be waxing poor and be sold unto thee, thou shalt not compel him to serve as a bond servant. So it's the same thing. They were keeping the law. And when you actually read, let's get it. Even though they weren't, so in totality, no, they weren't keeping law in every aspect, right? But when you pay attention to the book, the brother was bringing out, right, how he was bringing out the Hebrew, right? They know that it was Israelites, things of that nature. But with knowing that you're Israelite, you know the law as well, right? So some of them had some type of knowledge of the law, statutes, and commandments, right? So I'm gonna get this precept right quick, because this is what they was initially supposed to do, right? Let's go to 2nd Ezra chapter 13, right? And let's go to 40 right here. It says, I'm gonna start at verse 41. It says, but they took this counsel. Now this talking about Northern Kingdom, right? They took this counsel among themselves that they would lead the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. And that's what we call America today, right? It says that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. Because when we go back to the history of Northern Kingdom at the time when they were in the land, right, chiefly after the time of David, right, where you really can start off in, after the time of Joshua, because in Georgia Judges, our people is going off. But when you go into after David, then you got Solomon. So we'll say Solomon. After Solomon, when the kingdom split, right, Northern Kingdom was the first to go off. So they wasn't keeping law, statutes, commandments, right? You had wicked Negroes like Jeroboam, Nadab, right, setting up groves to these other idols and idolatry and other false gods, right? So here in 2nd Esdras chapter 13, they're saying, hey, we finna go to a place further where mankind never dwelt, which is America, right? Or as it says, Asherah, right? That they might there keep their statues. So they were supposed to come here to keep the statues. This is the point of me bringing this out. So when you look at how they behave and how they treat the so-called black man, how they treat him, they didn't treat him as a heathen, they treated him as a brother. They said that's the slavery or I wouldn't even call it slavery, but the indentured servitude that they was under with their brother was a total different thing compared to the chattel slavery that the so-called white man put us in, right? So when you go back to the law, right, hold on. You go back to the law, right? It says this. It says, I'm gonna jump down for the sake of time. I'm gonna jump down. Well, I'm gonna read this. It says, I'm gonna read 39 again, then I'm gonna read 40. It says, and if thy brother that dwelleth by thee be waxing poor. And you gotta think about it. When we escaped those plantations, we didn't have nothing. We didn't have no cattle. We didn't have no food. We just had the clothes on our back and whatever they got away with. That's all they had. So you look at it, and when you look at it logically, they was poor. And when you look at the state of the Native Americans at that time, they already had cattle, they had crops, they had different things where they could help one another, right? So it says, and be sold unto thee, thou shalt not compel them to serve as a bondservant, but as a hired servant. So at the time when you look at it, it was just like a hired servitude. It said they was paying, it said our brothers was paying them off. Now, what's the point of this? Let's go. I'm gonna keep reading though. It says, that dwelleth, it says, as a sojourner, he shall be with thee and shall serve thee unto the year of Jubilee. So I'm gonna cut right there and I'm gonna jump to verse 43. It says, thou shalt not rule over him with rigor, but thou shalt fear thy God. So when you look into the law, it's saying that you cannot rule over your brothers with rigor. And that's the situation it was. That's the relationship it was between the so-called blacks and the Seminoles. They did not rule over their brother with rigor like the so-called white man did. When he ruled over us, he was lynching us, right? They was essaying our women and things like that, right? So let's keep that in mind. So when you go to this, right? When you go to this, we're gonna go to this. Follow me on this, right? Right here, Romans 2:14 says this: For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law. So they was doing things that were by nature that was contained in the law. And when he talk about Gentiles, these Gentiles is not talking about these other nations, right? It's not talking about these other nations. It's talking about Israelites. Let me get a precept real fast. Let me get right. I'm gonna get 1 Corinthians 12:2. It says this: Ye know that ye were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led. Right? So it says that ye were Gentiles. A Gentile that's by birth cannot change his nationality, say I'm not a Gentile anymore. It does not work like that. If you're by birth, if you're a Gentile, you will always be a Gentile. But an Israelite can be a Gentile as well by not following law, statutes, commandments, by serving other gods, by serving idols. That's how Israelite will be deemed a Gentile. So with that being said, when we go to Romans and we see that you have an account right here of the Gentile or what the Jews would consider Gentiles. They was keeping the law. The things that we just read is what's contained in the law, and by nature, the Seminoles were doing that exact thing to the so-called blacks, right? So I want to kind of bring that out so we can kind of, but let me get these other things. So let's go to this. Huh? We say, King?
I ain't say nothing.
Oh, okay. So I want to show y'all some pictures to add to the pictures that the brother was showing, and then I got one more article. It's another book that I want to read. So, all right, let me remove this. Boom. So these will be some pictures of the black Seminoles, right? These will be pictures of the black Seminoles. And you see these men were war ready, right? You see them on horses, right? And these men was ready for war, right? And this was summer. And as you can see, they look just like brothers, right? Just like brothers. Just like brothers. So they probably like a brother you done seen before. Let me go to all right, so let me go ahead. Stop sharing that. Let me get another one. I got another image too. I need to remove that. All right. Let me share this other image. So this is another one. All right, and you see them. So these are the different accounts, right? These were the ones that joined ranks with the Spanish, right? To combat the Patriots, which would be those men of Georgia, right, and the South Carolinas, right? So you have it says this, it says Parmis Thomason in the civilian clothing also date unknown first joined the unit in January 1877 and served until August 1885. So you have different brothers, right? Again, these were what you call the Black Seminoles. That's what it was called, the Black Seminoles, right? But they was all Israelites, right? So check that out though. And you can see that's a brother. The brother got a fro, right? Look just like an Israelite. All right, so let's go to this account here, this book. Now, this next book, it ties into it. It's called The Black Indian Slave Narrative. So these are personal accounts from brothers of our people that actually, right, that was Native American. Someone was Choctaw, someone was Cherokee, right? And all of them giving you one personal accounts of the time when our people were enslaved, right? So this is a one I want to read. It said that this from Spence Johnson. So this was actually an actual man, right? And he's telling you about his experience, what he's seen in his personal life. But it says this: on that day, the lives of Spence Johnson and everyone around him took a sudden dramatic turn. 1 minute, he and his family were by the river washing clothes. The next, they had been seized by you know what stealers, right? And you know, ain't nobody else gonna steal the so-called black men, but the so-called white men. That's what they called them, and sold down the river to Louisiana. Whereas once they were among the finest families of the Choctaw Nation, they now found themselves on an auction block, being sold to the highest bidder as commodities on the slave market. So now you have accounts of Choctaw Native Americans being put on auction blocks, right? And that's the same thing when we talk about Deuteronomy 28 verse 60 and the different curses that Lord say what happened to the Israelites. You see this same thing happen to the Native Americans, right? Or the people where they actual name be Gad, right? You got Gad and you got Reuben, right? It says speaking only their native tongue, they were suddenly cast adrift in the world of worlds and symbols they little understood, facing a plight unprecedented in their experience. As they came to find out, the line between blacks and Indians in the 19th century was hardly as wide as many had thought, right? It wasn't a wide line. Keep going, it says, it seems that slaves came in many colors. That goes into the exact precept the brother brought out, right? In the book of Hosea, chapter 7, verse 8, right? Northern Kingdom, they come in different colors. So at the same time, it's telling the blacks and the Indians, they came in different colors, many colors, right? And that the peculiar institution, and they being nice by saying the peculiar institution, it says was no respect of persons. That peculiar institution was so-called white men. He didn't care if you was Native American. He didn't care if you was black. It was all the same thing to him, right? So it says, equally, the narrative of Spence Johnson can help us reshape our worldview and bring us to look at the institution of slavery in a different light. We have notions of what a slave was and what slavery was like, right? And that's going into the different things. Now, this book, they're giving different accounts of what happened to them in slavery. They different parents that got enslaved. They different wives. It's whole stories in this book that I'm talking about, right? But I'm not gonna read this whole thing, right? So I'm gonna it says I'm gonna leave that alone. I want to read this one account to show y'all too. This is an account. I want to get this account from a Cherokee sister, right? Get this account for this Cherokee sister. And what she said, right? This right here. All right. Let me get this Cherokee sister right quick. All right, now, so this was a girl, a sister of Cherokee descent. Now I'm gonna read this whole thing, but I'm gonna jump down to right here where it says back in Fort Scott, right? So it says back in Fort Scott, where I work, there's a little girl, beautiful little girl with long curls. I wondered why God made me black and ugly. So you know, the point is not the point she said she was ugly, but the point of she said that she was black, and this a woman of Cherokee descent, calling herself black. But that shows you that, like the brother was saying, the Cherokee at the time, they was not these pale $5 Indians that we see now today. When we Google and we were like Cherokee Indians, you start seeing people damn near similar to the so-called white man. No, the Cherokees at that time were black people. So it's showing you again that what? We're all the same people. We might came to America at different times, but we're all still Israelites, right? Might be from different tribes, but we all still Israelites, right? And I got one more thing I'm gonna get, right? But I did want to bring that account out. This Cherokee sister, she said, "I'm black, man." Before I get that, I'm gonna get this precept real fast, right? I'm gonna get this precept real fast because she pulled a Solomon, right? But in reverse though. So let me get this precept real fast. She pulled a Solomon, but in reverse. Because Solomon said, "I'm black but comely, I'm beautiful." She said, "I'm black," but she feel like she was ugly, right? And that shows you that's how people to this day. Some of our people still envy their own skin tone, right? They still look at the they might not say it, but they look at the so-called white race as they're a beautiful race. You got some of our sisters making their hair blonde. At this very moment, I forgot what the sister's name is, but there was a sister, and I don't know her name, but she literally bleached her skin. She's a black sister. She was a black sister, and she bleached her skin to look just like a white woman. So you have a sister here who felt that she was a Cherokee descent, felt that she was black and ugly. The same thing going right now to this day. But I want to get a scripture so we can see just how she said that she's black. Solomon said the same thing, which was an Israelite from the tribe of Judah. Right? I'm gonna get this. This is Song of Solomon 1:5. "I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon." Right? So when we see that again, she understood her skin tone. She knew where she come from, right? She might didn't like her skin, but she was Israelite. Right? Let me get this one last thing, right? Remove this right quick. Remove. All right. And this is my last one right quick. I'm gonna bring this out. It says this. It says with the introduction of the African slavery in the early 17th century, there was a gradual transition from the enslavement of the Native Americans to those of non-Native slaves. For many years, though, African Americans and Native Americans shared a common experience at the hands of slavery. So we had the same common experience, and that's why when we go to understanding who the Israelites are, and you go to the book of Deuteronomy, the same curses that we see happen to the so-called blacks, right, in America to this day, the same things happen to the Native Americans. And that's how we know that they're Israelites as well, because they underwent the same curses that we did. They underwent slavery, right? They underwent being poor, right? They underwent all the different curses in Deuteronomy, right, that we underwent. They underwent the plagues that was mentioned not in this book, right? So forth and so forth, right? When you read Deuteronomy 28, verse 15 on down. But it says this: increasingly, the cultures of both people begin to reflect their influence upon one another. Much of what we understand as African American culture may have been influenced by Native American traditions. African and Native Americans intertwined in complex ways in the early Southeast, and the emerging culture reflected the blending of the two. As much as anything, these narratives are an examination of the dynamic interaction of the cultures and how historically the cultural roots provided continuity within a tragic and complicated relationship with the institution of slavery, right? And the complex and the tragic thing that the hold on, let me make sure let me get this precept. I'm gonna remove this. Let me get this precept. The complex and the harsh and tragic things that the Native Americans endured that the so-called blacks endured was prophesied to happen to the Most High chosen people over 1,000 years ago. Over 1,000 years ago. So we hear about these different things and how the Native Americans live and how the so-called blacks live. Right? They had, it's damn it, they did the same thing. Right? It said they was intertwined. So I'm gonna get this precept right quick. This Deuteronomy 28 and verse 20. So what we're going to, for those that are new to this, right? Matter of fact, I'm just read it for context for those that might have said, I never heard it before. Right? Let's say you never heard this. Let's go over this. This Deuteronomy 28 and 15. It says, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe, to do all his commandments and statutes, which I command this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. And that those curses, another word for evils. The Lord said these evils will come upon thee and overtake thee. So we're going to go through, and I'm going to jump down. I'm going to go to verse 20 to see the evils that happened to the Israelites for their disobedience. And the Israelites in totality is northern and southern kingdom. It says, the Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke, and all that thou says thy hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed. It says it's going to be vexation, it's going to be rebuke, right? It's going to be cursing. These things happen to our people as a nation, and it still happened to. And what's so crazy, at the same time, the Native Americans or Northern Kingdom, right, and the blacks was living out the curses in America at the same time during this time, right? And it says, until thou be destroyed, until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby they have forsaken me. So because we forsook the Most High put us in the predicaments where we was in, right? Those situations that we went through, the Most High did that, right? I'm gonna jump down, right? I ain't gonna read all these. I just kind of wanted just to show y'all that the curses that the Lord say that would happen to his people for their disobedience, the same thing happened to the Native Americans. So you can't deny and say that they're not Israelites, right? And if you didn't know that, let's say you might be of Native American descent. You might be from Choctaw Nation. You might be of Cherokee, right? We're not talking about the $5 Indians now. We're not talking about them. We're talking about true descendants, right, of African descent, right? If that very well could be you would be an Israelite, right? So let's I'm gonna jump down. Just get another precept real quick. I'm gonna go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, and I'm gonna go to matter of fact, I'm gonna go to verse number 49, right? It says, the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, right, as swift as the eagle flyeth, right? And when you actually go into, right, that one end of the earth, you realize, right, that these nations, right, the so-called white man, he came literally from the other end of the earth, right? When you read on Second Esdras 13 and verse 40, right? It said it took namely a year, right, to travel, right, to America. To America. Yeah, it took them namely a year, right? So it says, as swift as the eagle flyeth, a nation. And what nation is symbolic for an eagle? We know, what is this nation's bird? What do you see on your dollar bill? Right? It says, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Right? And that's why you had situations where the Seminole tribes, they need interpreters, right? And that way they would rely on the so-called blacks to help them interpret, because they didn't understand what the hell the so-called white man was saying, right? And we at one point in time, we didn't, until after they beat us so much, we finally did, right? But it says this, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. And when you look at what the so-called white man did to the so-called blacks, the Seminoles, the Cherokee, the Choctaw, and so forth, He's that fierce nation. He didn't regard our young people. He didn't regard our old people, right? The young people, they was enslaved at young ages, right? I want to say, the children, they was in fields. I want to say about 5 years old. It's probably earlier than that, but I know for sure about 5 years old, right? The old, he didn't care. During the time of the Trail of Tears, when all those Native Americans had to uproot and go to dang Oklahoma, right? And it was thousands of them perished on that way. They call it and in this book, right? They didn't call it Trail of Tears, they call it the Trail of Death. They call it the Trail of Death because that's what happened to our people, right? But when you look at it, it's because it all stems back to we was the people that broke the law, statutes, commandments of the Most High God, right? So Lord, he punished us for us transgressing his laws, statutes, commandments. So we got to take accountability of what happened, what we did wrong. And that's why now it's imperative or important for those people that know that, hey, I'm an Israelite, right? I'm those people. I associate myself with those people. Now it's time for these people to repent and come back to the law, statutes, commandments, to return to the Lord, right, in these times. But that I yield though.
Come on, man. Beautiful. Hey, man. Beautiful expounding on the history, dog. And hey, we got 2 more set parts of it. You know what I'm saying? And as the parts go more and more, and we dive into it, we're gonna dive more into more history, more videos, and more undeniable proof. So, hey, I pray brothers and sisters was edified. You know what I'm saying? We coming up on our time stamp. But we pray brothers and sisters were edified. Y'all received it. Y'all took heed to the different books and notes and make mention of it and go read it for yourselves, man. The Bible tells you to inquire of the former age and to prepare yourself for the search of your fathers. You won't know how to fully explain and understand the Bible if you don't go into history, you don't research, and you don't study. We just can't study all the scriptures about the white man going into slavery. Brothers can't just study all the scriptures about Isaiah 4:1. You know what I'm saying? We got to study everything to fully understand why the Most High done what he has done, and also to help us with our teaching when you're going out to find the lost tribes of the nation of Israel. You know what I'm saying? Deuteronomy 28, you got to know how to explain it and expound and make it relatable to all the 12 tribes, not just Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, with that, we pray brothers and sisters were edified. You know what I'm saying? We got more information coming soon. Truth Revealing Tuesdays will be every Tuesday starting at 8:15, Lord willing, man. Hey, share the video, like the video. Hey, help us push this truth out. Help us push this history out, this knowledge out, and these current events. You know what I'm saying? The heck was that? Brother over there just touching stuff, man. But yeah, man. So, hey, help us push this truth because we can spread it to the 4 corners of the earth and also get this history out to our people who might not know this stuff. So, hey, we pray that y'all week be blessed. Brothers and sisters, stay in the spirit.